Welcome to episode 106 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. After decades of keeping helicopters and their pilots safe in the skies, Mike Broderick earned the Charles E. Taylor Master Mechanic Award. It is the Federal Aviation Administration's highest honor for aircraft mechanics. But stepping away from the tools didn't mean retiring from his purpose. In today's episode, Mike reflects on his interesting journey from a stint in the U.S. Navy to building a thriving helicopter maintenance business and now mentoring the next generation of aviation technicians. He shares hard-won lessons, a few regrets, and why he believes it's never too late to make a change or to embrace a greater calling. He also talks about what he does to keep fit and stay connected with others. So please welcome Mike Broderick to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Mike. I really appreciate the time. How'd you come up with the name Roller Doc?
That name started when somebody called me for some troubleshooting and they said, "Hey, you're the doctor of helicopters. Tell me, Doc, what's going on here?" And that kind of stuck. And so I used that as my handle, just so that everybody knows that if they have a problem with their helicopter, that they can get in touch with me. And that's I use that as the title of one of my magazine articles is "The Doc is In," and then we discuss different things, and then it's played on that. And I've used it both in the email. I tried to have a license plate that said that, but it didn't work. So somebody else somewhere had it. But it just kind of started that way.
Okay. So
somebody pinned it on me, and I've just taken it and run with it.
So your career has been in helicopter maintenance, although we don't necessarily call them helicopters anymore, right? They're vertical.
Yeah, vertical lift aircraft.
Very good. How'd you get involved in that?
It started out more as happenstance. I got involved in aviation when I was basically involved in car racing. Not quite street legal. We were drag racing over by the Van Nuys Airport in California. And I would see the Learjets taking off, and I loved the noise and I loved the speed. And when I joined the Navy, I was hoping that they would allow me to extend that career. And when I was in boot camp, they had assigned me to be an avionics technician, which was close, but I thought, oh, that would be fine. 2 or 3 weeks into the boot camp, my drill instructor called me into the office and said, "You don't qualify for that. What else would you like to do?" And I said, "Oh, that's great. I would like to become what they call a machinist mate, working with the aircraft, turbine engines." I never thought about helicopters, just aircraft is what I wanted. He said, "Okay, that's no problem. You've got it." And then 2 weeks later, he called me back into the office again, and he said, "Broderick, you're one dumb SOB." I said, "Pardon me?" And he said, "You're too stupid to be a mechanic. We're going to make you an AG." Which I questioned was, "What is an AG, sir?" And he said, "That's an aerographer's mate." Looked at him and I said, "I don't understand aerographer." He said, "What did I tell you? Get out of my office." So I had to go look it up. That's a weatherman, aerographer. So they made me a weatherman, and come to find out it had nothing to do with my abilities. It was what they needed back at my home base. And so I became a weatherman, and it was an interesting rate, but I, again, was more interested in aviation, and went to school and studied at Glendale College in California, tested for my airframe and power plant license, and then went to work for a major engine overhaul company in Burbank, California.
Okay. How long were you in the Navy, it sounds like, right?
65 to 71.
Okay. So it was not a career.
No, it was 1 year active duty, and then the rest of the time was what they called active reserve. Was at Los Alamitos Air Station in Los Alamitos, California. And that's, again, California. I was born and raised in the scene of my misfit youth. I was what they called a valley boy, I guess. I did all of the things, the surfing and all the other obscene things that took place in the 60s.
And now you're living in Arizona. When did you move out here?
3 years ago.
Okay. Now you are no longer turning wrenches, though, correct?
That's correct. I've pretty much given up on the wrench turning and give classes. I've always enjoyed the instruction side of it. I felt that's part of what I should do to give back to the industry that's done so well for me. is to instruct others. And it came, again, as happenstances. People would call me looking for solutions to troubleshooting that they were doing while working on their helicopters in the field. And we found out, and when I had my own company, I found out that one of the best ways to attract business was to put on these seminars that would explain how the engine operated, talk about the service bulletins that had come out from the manufacturer, and then explore troubleshooting ideas. And the best thing that I found was that you get a group of mechanics in a room, and everybody's experienced some kind of difficulty. And we exchanged ideas, and pretty soon you come up with a troubleshooting plan, and it was universally decided. And I would log that and mention it and learn from them as much as I tried to teach them methods for troubleshooting, starting with using the KISS method, keep it simple, and then going into the more difficult parts of the helicopter. Everybody wants to start with the hardest thing first. You want to show off your knowledge. And really, as I said, it's the KISS method. It's keep it simple, stupid. Don't be doing anything. Find out what was to happen last and then go from there. And the one thing I've always found is your best troubleshooting tool is the pilot. He's the guy that flies it every day. Just how your car operates and you recognize little noises or changes or things that go on. This is the guy that sits behind the stick and pushes the pedals, and he knows it. He knows how it feels, and if he's at all cognizant of the changes, he'll tell you, and you use him and his experience to help troubleshoot what's going on.
Okay, it's technology. That's got to be a challenge to keep up with that.
It is. It's quite a challenge, and they've come up with some really neat stuff to help the mechanic. They've got a computer system that they put sensors throughout the helicopter that can determine and give you preview of what's going on with your helicopter and let you recognize that a vibration that you may not see or be able to feel has occurred, and it's changing, and gives you the RPM and tells you what component is actually going through some changes. And so it helps with the maintenance. You can get it before it actually fails. This is the technology that's out now. And then, of course, you've got the drone industry just has had an explosive impact on aviation totally. And our friends at the Federal Aviation Administration are still trying to wrap their hands around this drone industry. There's 2 million drones out there.
2 million?
2 million. And this is a toy that started out as you go in and you buy this for your kid. You go into the hobby store, you buy one, and now, since the FAA has gotten involved in it, you are the total responsible person for its maintenance, for its flight, for its safety, for following all of the regulations that are out there. And it's scary because a lot of times the guys that go in and buy these for their kids couldn't spell drone when they walked in, and when they walk out, they're now the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And FAA holds them accountable, and that's the part that's a little scary, is you're getting a lot of novice pilots, technicians, and so on in the industry.
Do you own a drone yourself?
I've got a couple of 2 or 3, and I don't fly them as much as I used to. They're okay, they're fun, but I bought them and got involved in them just so that I could learn what would be a good maintenance instruction for them, good practice.
Yeah.
The FAA, believe it or not, they do control the pilot license, and they control how the thing can fly and where it can fly. But they have no control over the maintenance, and they have no control over how it's built. So these rotorcraft come out, and they're put out by a manufacturer, and there's no FAA oversight on their assembly or on their production. And for the longest time, what was put out for maintenance was make sure it's safe. That's a broad brush. And again, you experienced guy who doesn't know what is safe. I've taken it upon myself to investigate just exactly how these things operate and what causes them. They're small helicopters. So basically what you're seeing that happens with a helicopter also takes place with a drone, just in a smaller package. If you're paying attention to it, it won't fall out of the sky. But It's the problem that I see in the industry is the inexperience. It's getting better. It is getting.
You were such a good mechanic. I understand the FAA honored you with its highest award for mechanics.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, the Charles E. Taylor Award they give that to a mechanic who has been active in his profession for 50 years plus and hasn't killed anybody. Far as I know, nobody's called and tried to sue me for hurting them. That was a great honor to have bestowed on me, and it was recommended by somebody. That's usually how it starts out, and then they investigate your record to see if there's any violations, and then it's an official title that you are allowed to have, and they give you a pin to wear that says that you got it. Yeah, I got that. I was proud of that.
It's a very distinguished award to be getting. And then after you spend your entire career turning wrenches, and then you have to step away from that as you get older. That had to have been hard.
It is. It still is. I miss the days of just packing up the tools and heading out. There were times when I missed some family events, taking care of customers. That, from a personal standpoint, if I could change some stuff, maybe I would. I don't know. You get so bent on and focused on performing and doing again, this is what happens. This is what's instilled, I think, in young men and pounded into us as we grow older. You're responsible for a career. You're responsible for the financial support of the family. And your wife pretty much takes on the raising of the children. And while you're there, and you're not just totally divorced from the actual activities, you are from the day-to-day, and you miss a lot of stuff. And especially if you own your own business, especially in this industry where helicopters are a 24/7 deal. I would get calls on Saturday night and have to climb on a plane and be gone. And I remember one Thanksgiving, this was before cell phones, and I was troubleshooting a helicopter operator who was flying tours over in Hawaii. And he followed me to 3 different locations where I was visiting family and so on. And we had what we call calling services. They would call a general number. And if you were on the duty that weekend, you had to tell the operator where you were so that they could connect you with the customer. And this guy followed me, like I said, 4 different places right up into Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh my.
It was an all-consuming thing. Sometimes it's neat. I helped a lot of people, and I'm sure that they appreciated it. But there were times when I may have missed some things that I wished I didn't.
But now that you have stepped away from the career field, you haven't really totally stepped away. You're still active and involved. You're paying it forward. Tell us what you're doing to do that.
I'm writing for a magazine, Helicopter Maintenance is the name of the magazine, and I write 3 articles. One is it's like a blog thing. It's the doc is in. That's playing on the handle that I use. Another one is on drones and how the industry is changing, and I try to bring about make the readers aware of what's going on in the industry. Although it's information that I glean from publications and other things that go on that I get on email, I feel that if it's condensed and found in one location, it's probably very helpful to my readers. And then I write an article having to do with maintenance or either troubleshooting or talk about a system or talk about a bulletin that's out on it. Or I interview somebody who's doing maintenance or who has come up with a new idea and is certifying it through the FAA. One of the articles that I'm really looking forward to writing about is a company that has taken a full-size helicopter and converted it into a drone. They've removed the pilot from it and using all of the computer technology, fly it from just basically standing by the side of the road with a pilot there and fly this thing. They're using it for agricultural work right now. Really, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Now looking for certification for his helicopter. It's a real live helicopter that had to be certified by the FAA. It had to go through all of the programs in order to get its license. And yet what he did is he just pulled the human influence out of it, put a computer in there. And so The FAA is scratching their head is, okay, now what do we call this?
Exactly.
It's going to sell. It's going to do real well. These guys started an interview, and I don't know if it was in that article was in the magazine that I sent to you that said, look, Mr. Robinson, no hands. Yeah, that's what it was about. And so that's the newest technology. That's the new stuff that's very exciting.
Right. You had mentioned that you have to recruit younger people to the career field, or that's one of your desires to do that. I think that's so important because we as a society seem to have directed young folks into colleges and four-year degrees and away from the trade. Why is it so important to have these kids mentored by experienced people?
You're right. We don't have the people that do hands-on anymore. High school, they had the shops, had a wood shop, a electric shop, automotive shops for kids that were not really college interested. They wanted to do something else. And I've talked to members of the other trades, the automotive industry, the plumbers, the electricians, and they all are saying the same thing that I am. Hey, we don't have anybody standing behind us. You're going to see more and more gray-haired guys out there doing the job because there is nobody there for them to train.
Exactly.
And we need the plumbers, we need the electricians, we need the carpenters, the skill sets, or this stuff is not going to be taken care of. You need the aviation technician who can get in there with their tools and scratch out the answer and fix the problems and keep the things safe. I think that lately with the accidents that we've had and the things that have been going on, I think that's becoming very evident to the public that the mechanic side of it is starting to slip a little bit. It's very concerning. And I'm not sure if it's because the generation that's coming up is more in tune with the computers and they're more in tune with cell phones and sitting with their laptops than they are with getting out there and fixing the cars. And that's where it starts. Usually you start with your car or your parents' car. I started with both and learned. My dad was not a mechanic. He was a cameraman for the studios. But when his car failed, it was, oh boy, I get my chance. My mentor was a man who lived in our neighborhood who was an auto mechanic. And he taught me my first lesson. He worked for the city of Burbank in their power plant division. And so when the car was sitting in the garage and before he went to work that night, he said, okay, he helped me take the hood off. He said, okay, I want you to take all of the stuff off of the engine, get it ready to be pulled. And he said, I'll check on you tomorrow. I said, no, I'll get it done before you get home tonight. He came in the garage and all he saw was a greasy guy standing there with stuff everywhere. There were fan belts and nuts and bolts and stuff. If I could get it undone, I did and tossed it over my shoulder. And then he said, okay, where is all of this stuff and how are we going to find it? And it never dawned on me. Oh, I guess, yeah, we need to find this stuff and put it back together. He said, you've now increased our time to put it back together by probably 2 weeks. Let me explain something to you, son. And that was my first lesson on keeping organized on tearing stuff apart. So
that's right. That's why us older folks are so desperately needed to provide that kind of guidance to young folks. Yeah, not just helicopter maintenance, but all of the trades, like you said. Isn't it incumbent upon people of our age to actually be promoting our trades and our craft to younger generations and letting them know that it is indeed a viable career field where they can make a very good living?
Oh, absolutely. You can make a very good living. And it takes a skill set. They just say, oh, you're a mechanic. The thing that cracks me up, that when I tell people I'm in helicopters, first thing they want to know is, are you a pilot? And no, I keep pilots alive. They kind of look at me and I said, no, I'm not a mechanic. Or I'm not scratch that. I'm not a pilot. But if I tell the pilot he can't fly, he can't fly. I keep them out of harm's way, and that's my job. And there's this thing about people say, oh, you're just a mechanic. And I usually start out a lot of my seminars with asking if there's anybody in the class that's named Justa. And they go, Justa? What do you mean? I said, there's nobody here with the first name of Justa. Okay, so then none of you are just a mechanic. You are a technician, and you keep pilots alive. And that kind of gets their attention a little bit because I think they sink back into the, yeah, I'm just a mechanic. And I think it's a concept that we have developed as a society, that the knuckle dragging guy that couldn't put two sentences together is the mechanic.
Right.
And hero walks in there with his freshly fresh iron shirt and hat and sunglasses, the Tom Cruise look, and goes off and saves the world. That's not the case. It's unfortunate that that stereotype has still progressed today.
That's a very good point that you make, Mike. It's because the mechanics of all of this stuff is evolving. Look at cars from the time when you were a teenager to what they are today. You just can't go in and fix them yourself anymore with a wrench. You need almost a degree in computer science to understand the intricacies of modern technology in these vehicles and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And the automotive industry is seized onto that. And what they do is they grade their mechanics. They require them to be trained. If they're going to be certified, they have to go back for retraining every couple of years. Believe it or not, the aviation industry, once you get your airframe and power plant, it's up to you to get your continuing education. And they don't come back and do a check on you at all.
Until there's a problem.
Yeah, that is a big problem. That is a huge problem. The only ones that they require consistent training on is what they call an inspection authorization. And what that does is that's like getting a graduate degree from your A&P license. You go through some training and you are allowed to release an aircraft after it's had a major repair. And you inspect it and you've gained the knowledge of that particular aircraft and you research all of the bulletins and then you can sign it off. You're deputized by the FAA to release an aircraft to service. That's it. And the other countries, EASA over in Europe and Australia, all require, and Canada for that matter too, all require their aircraft mechanics to go through a recertification. As a pilot, every couple of years you have to go through a certification if you're a private pilot. Every year if you're a commercial pilot. And they to make sure that your craft, that you are capable of piloting the airplane. Nothing for the aircraft mechanic. And that's a shame. And I've poked the industry a little bit at that and seeing what I can get out of it to maybe force the issue a little bit.
Especially true when you're keeping the pilots alive. You would think that you need to be up to date on all of these kinds of things.
That's the thing that I've said to pilots. You guys ought to be pushing this just as hard as anybody. You take my word for it when I tell you that it's safe to fly. You jump in it and go. And I would think that you would want to know that I know what I'm talking about.
Your career has been in the air with helicopter maintenance and things like that, but you have also been grounded a little bit in that you love to ride your bike. And you have been involved in a big bike ride in Iowa. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah, I enjoy bike riding. That saves the knees, and I still ride quite a bit, or I'd say quite a bit, once, twice a week, a 20 or 25 mile ride.
Wow.
But the biggest ride that I went on is produced in Iowa. And if you're a bike rider, you know about the RAGBRAI. The Des Moines Register has started with a bike ride, and they call it the Register's Great Annual Bike Ride Across Iowa. Or some guys say the Great Annual Beer Ride Across Iowa. You start in the westernmost part of the state, where the Missouri River flanks the state, and you dip your rear tire in that, and then you ride through a set of towns that are expecting you. About 10,000 of your closest friends show up for this thing. You bring a sleeping bag and a tent, and you ride from place to place. They will cart your stuff. If you sign up for it, forget the actual cost. It's not very expensive. But they will cart you off if you get hurt. They will also take your stuff from place to place. And you ride across Iowa and meet the people. You stop along the way, you meet the farmers. They'll have churches and charity groups have meals out there for you. That state is known for its pork chop, and this
Yes.
guy's A guy, oh man, he makes the best pork chops. They are really good. 6 days. Though my whole thing was just a little under 600 miles.
Wow.
You end up at the Mississippi River and you dip your front tire in that river. That's part of the tradition. As I say, you go from town to town. The towns enjoy having you. And when you get your tent set up, it depends upon what they've got available. We've taken showers in car washes where they put a tarp down the middle and turn the water on, and little girls on one side, little boys on the other, and you go in there and you take a shower. And that's the whole thing. And it's the only place that I like a horse and lost 15 pounds.
That's fun. And you're still bike riding today. Now, are these
Yes,
organized bike trips, or are you just going out on your own?
Just going out with a group. Bunch of old farts like me, we all get together and ride, mainly just camaraderie, not really doing anything other than just getting a little exercise in. Stay on the flats. It's pretty flat around here, other than unless you get off into the mountains, but it's pretty flat, and then it's enjoyable. Again, it's just something to keep the heart going.
Are you still biking when it's 110 degrees in Phoenix?
Not when it's 110, and that's when it gets up to be about 100 degrees. There's more than just a minimum difference between that and 95. It would be about 105, and it's exponentially different to ride in that. So now we usually, if it gets to be that hot, we'll leave sometime about 6 in the morning and try to get done by about before it gets up to the century mark.
If you had an opportunity to turn the clock back, is there anything you'd be doing differently?
I don't know, and I saw that question too, and I wondered, one thing leads to another. Your mistakes lead to triumphs and vice versa. And I don't know if I would totally change things around or what I might do. The one thing, as I said, that is that owning your own business caused me to be very, I guess, egocentrist. I was concerned about the business. I had at one point about 50 people that worked for me. And so that was my main focus. And while I tried to pay attention to the family and make sure that everything was good, and my day began at usually about 4:30 in the morning. I would go to the gym, get on the road about 6 o'clock, 6 a.m., and then drive 60 miles to where my shop was. Work until probably, if I left work at 5, I got home at 8. If I left work at 6, I got home at 8. So difference. I would stay there a little longer, but I didn't want to move away from where I was. I wanted the girls to have a good, steady home, and where we were living in Santa Clarita had good schools. We were established there, so I did the driving and burned up a lot of cars going back for 120 miles a day. I did that for 14 years.
Wow.
I was fortunate in that everybody understood. My wife was very supportive of it. When I first got started, I remember the first day that I got off the freeway to go to the shop, and I was in partners with 2 other gentlemen. And I stopped at the signal, and I was waiting, and I'm going, for the first time in my life, I don't have a guaranteed paycheck. I'm really going to have to work this, and how am I going to do it? And that was the lesson. For other regrets, some of my misguided youth, my father passed away when I was 19, and I missed some of that interaction with my father. I did a lot of crazy things, which probably drove my mom nuts. And for those things that I did that drove her crazy, she was a very patient woman. I regret the times that I might have caused her grief. Again, it was things that I was learning when I was learning on my own as I was reaching out there. So, like I said, California that was my place with my misspent youth.
Okay. Is there anything on your bucket list yet that you'd like to accomplish?
Get over to Ireland. We've talked about that. We thought we had a trip, but we missed the opportunity for this next month coming up. But I do believe, ancestry begins in Ireland and Scotland. My grandfather immigrated to Canada from Northern Ireland. I'm not quite sure where. I'm still trying to find that out. And my grandmother from Edinburgh, Scotland, into Canada, into Montreal. They married, had a family. My grandfather moved them to St. Louis and then went back up to Canada to work on the Canadian Railroad. And which was just never heard of at that time. Grandfather and grandmother separated and became divorced. And that was never talked about in the family.
Right.
So family history just never got related beyond just the little bit that I could glean from people. But we just didn't talk about divorce. That was something that didn't happen in a Catholic family back then. Anyway, I'm the, I guess, first generation. My father was a naturalized citizen from Canada, as were his brothers. They all became citizens and then went out and fought in the Second World War, each one in a different branch of the service. And then their children are obviously firstborn citizens of the U.S. So I'm the first of that Broderick generation from that ilk over here to be born in the U.S.
I hope you get over there sometime soon.
Oh, I do. It's really going to be, just try and find, and if we can secure the trip, then I'm really going to dig in to see if I can find out where Grandpa came from, find out what he did over there to cause him to leave.
Do you have any advice for people over 50 who might be struggling with what to do to give their lives meaning or purpose?
If you're not satisfied with where you are, change.
You're not a tree, you can leave.
Absolutely. You can change. You can. At 50, I started my own business late 40s and ran it through 50s, when everybody would figure that's about the time you should be settled into a safe career. And roll the dice. You're not old. It's never too late to, if it fails, okay, you tried. But there's nothing worse than to be sitting there in your old age going, God, I wonder what would have happened if I only would have. Don't let 50 be a barrier, especially today. I think 50, 60 even, if people want to swap careers around, I think is a good thing. Don't be afraid to analyze your life as to where you are. And again, if you don't like what, find out what it's going to take to change it. And embrace a spiritual nature. If religion is not your cup of tea, that doesn't mean that you can't find somebody who can help you spiritually, and allow that to happen. Allow yourself to become more spiritual. The world is, it's not happenstance. It didn't just happen. If you stop and think about it, there has to be a higher power that created all of this, that created all of the earth. I look at the picture that you've got behind you. That's not happenstance. That was created. The fact that you and I are able to communicate and understand ideas and exchange ideas, how is that possible? It's just we're a massed group of flesh, muscle, and so on. And yet all of these things interact, and we're able to communicate and live a life. How is that possible? It's possible only because of a creator that created us. How does birth happen? That just boggles the mind. And if you let all of those things play in your mind, you're going to come to the conclusion, a higher power. Call it anything you want, but there is a higher power out there.
The intricacies of the human body just exhibit that all the time. Just all the ways the cells at the cellular level, the things that go on there to make it work is just astonishing. Yes.
And something that I happen to think about, this is unrelated. We have the veterans group that I'm a part of holds an annual gala dance. And one of the things we go through a posting of the colors, and then we go through an invocation. And why I was asked to lead the invocation, I have no idea, but I was. And one of the things that I thought about was, what if none of that I just explained gets you thinking? Think about your family dog. And I had people stare at me just like you did. What do you mean the family dog? Okay, who's more loyal than that? Who loves you unconditionally, follows you everywhere, who depends upon your kindness to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And it's like God put this thing here to train you, to give you an idea. There's somebody else out there. And just to give you a hint as to who put it there, he reversed the letters in his name and called it.
It's great. I love that. How can people connect with you if they would like to touch base?
You can, I would say call, but with all the robocalls, I would probably...
Exactly.
But my email, which is Rotordoc, ROTORDOC 1223 at iCloud.com.
Are you active on social media at all?
No, not really. Just emails. I figure I get enough emails, and if I start getting into social media, that's just one more thing to distract me.
Absolutely. No. Thank you for sharing your story with me today, Mike. I really appreciate it. You've done a lot with your career, and you're allowing what you learned in that to influence what you do now to help with the people coming behind you, and I love that.
Thank you for interviewing me, and I'm glad that you and my daughter met. That's how all of this happened with all of the people, so that your people know how we got together. And you were obviously a big influence on her. Can't tell you how proud I am of what she's done with her life and her education.
Super. Thank you again. After spending a lifetime in helicopter maintenance, including running his own shop with 50 employees and responding to client calls across the globe, Mike is still deeply involved in the aviation industry. Today, he's using his decades of experience to educate and mentor others by writing for Helicopter Maintenance Magazine. He produces regular columns, including one focused on drones and another titled The Dock is In. In his columns, Mike highlights industry trends, shares troubleshooting tips, and even interviews innovators bringing new technology to the skies. Beyond writing, Mike is also an advocate for trade careers, especially in aviation. He's passionate about helping young people recognize they don't need a 4-year degree to enjoy a fulfilling, well-paying job. Whether it's helicopter repair, plumbing, or carpentry, Mike believes older generations must actively mentor and encourage youth to embrace hands-on careers before vital skills disappear. When he's not educating or advocating, you might find Mike bicycling through the Arizona desert or reminiscing about his epic ride across Iowa with 10,000 fellow bikers during the 7-day Great Bicycle Ride Across Iowa tour. With Ireland still on his bucket list and a firm belief that it's never too late to pursue purpose, Mike offers this encouragement to anyone over 50. If you are not satisfied with where you are, then change. You're not a tree, you can leave. Those are wise words from a man who continues to soar even with his feet on the ground. People can connect with Mike through email at rotordoc1223@icloud.com. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.